After the fight between Naruto and Kiba, Naruto walked up to the stands and looked at the stunned faces of everyone there that knew him from the academy. What? Is there something on my face? Naruto asked as he started to try and wipe his face. That was until he heard Shikamaru start to chuckle a little and he looked at him. What do you want, lazy ass? Naruto asked with no hatred in his voice, more so in a joking way, as Shikamaru replied. I think it's more so none of us expected you to have fully mature Sharingan, or even a Sharingan. Then Shikamaru was about to continue until Sasuke spoke up. How do you have it? And how have you got it fully matured as well? Sasuke growled out, looking at Naruto with a pissed off look. Naruto looked at him and sighed as he leaned against the railing of the sidelines. I was trained by arguably two of the best Sharingan users the clan had, and even then, I still pushed my body to its limits, Naruto said, and then looked up at the monitor to see who was fighting next and chuckled a little at the name. On the board was Gaara no Sabuka vs Rock Lee. Naruto grinned and looked at Guy. I really hope you taught him well in Taijutsu, Guy, Naruto said as he then watched the match, confusing all of the rookies. Once the match started, sand exploded from Gaara's gourd and started to scatter itself around the arena as Gaara smirked light at it all. Lee thought nothing of it until he saw Gaara raise his hand and the sand shot up in a small pillar from the ground and hit Lee's shoulder, knocking him off guard and sending him to the other side of the arena as Gaara lowered his hand, the sand following his command. Gaara was still on guard though, as he felt the resistance his sand met when it hit Lee and was afraid of what would have happened had he not caught Lee off guard. As he was standing there waiting for Lee to join back in the fight, he was thinking about how much stronger his sand was now that he and Shikaka were working together, even if it was only a small amount of working together. He was snapped out of his thoughts though as his sand shot up behind him, catching Lee's leg, and Gaara's eyes widened slightly and silently thanked Shikaka's automatic defense. The fight continued with Lee trying to break through Gaara's sand shield and Gaara's shield blocking Lee's attacks until Lee heard Guy shout, Lee, take them off. That was when the battle seemed to tip into Lee's side, although Gaara's sand was still blocking the attacks, but Gaara couldn't see them anymore. That was when Lee broke through his defense and kicked him into the air, breaking his sand armor a little, and Gaara grunted in pain until he heard "Oh Motrange." This came from Lee as Gaara caught a glimpse of the bandages as they wrapped around him. Gaara, realizing it was too late to escape, increased his sand armor's thickness and made sure to also reinforce it with chakra. That's when they made contact with the ground. After what seemed like forever but was actually 10 seconds, Lee stood up, followed by Gaara, whose sand armor was attempting to restore itself, showing to everyone how he survived, and Naruto just sighed a little until he felt Lee's presence get stronger, and he looks to Lee and grins a little. With Naruto in the stands. Of course, you, the Taijutsu master of Konoha, taught him these, Naruto said as he started to remember reading about the 8 gates in his dad's journal and how bad they can affect your life if you haven't trained properly. You know of this technique, Naruto? Guy asked as Naruto chuckled and nodded. Of course I know of the 8 gates. Who in Konoha doesn't know about the forbidden Taijutsu technique? Naruto said simply and turned to his fellow rookies and saw a couple confused, and he sighed and started to explain. The 8 gates are a kinjutsu that increases the user's body output to degrees that are almost unheard of. They could even rival a cage if you opened all 8, that is until the timer runs out. The first gate doesn't have a huge drawback, only a little fatigue and some muscle problems apparently, but it will slowly get worse each gate you increase it by. That is until you get to the most drastic but strongest gate, Naruto said, and then turned to Lee and finished. The 8th and final gate doesn't only increase your muscle strength and your body's speed, but it also kills the user upon usage. It's the toll of the 8th gate. Naruto finished and could practically hear the shivers down the spines of his classmates as he continued to watch as Lee opened the gates until he reached the 5th and whistled. Lee really is a prodigy in his own right, Naruto muttered as he then looked at Gaara, but the strain he put on his body opening the gates will affect the outcome more than you'd think. Naruto finished as he sat down and everyone went to watching the match. Back to the match. Lee was panting as was Gaara, but Lee seemed a lot more labored. He shot off the ground and Gaara, knowing his defense wouldn't work, allowed the hit to land as he was thrown up into the air. What they all missed though was Gaara's small smirk as he left his sand armor and replaced himself with a sand clone that took his place. Lee proceeded to launch himself and Gaara into the floor and jumped back panting heavier, and then he felt the sand trapping him as his gates started to close and Gaara said forfeit. Was the simple command, and Lee wanted to argue but he passed out from the strain on his body. Gaara slowly lowered Lee to the floor using his sand as the medics came in and Hey just announced Gaara the winner. Gaara nodded and headed back to the stands and looked to Naruto, who smiled a little and nodded, getting a nod in return. Sentry of the arena. Hiruzen was stood up in the center with the winners of each match in front of him. He looked at them all and nodded as he continued with a speech about how the Chunin exams were a replacement for the wars and how they would assist with contracts from the minor villages and what not. This got a confused mutter from some of the examines as they all had their attention drawn back to the Hokage as he told them to pick a number from the lottery machine and that would be the number they would be in for the tournament. Naruto waited until some of the others went before he walked over and collected his and chuckled a little. I'm the second match. Number 3, Naruto said, getting a nod from the proctors as they wrote down Naruto, Uchiha and the 3 after it. That continued until all the genin had picked their match. UPS and Hiruzen announced them. The first matchup is Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara no Sabuka, then Naruto Uchiha vs Neji Hyuga. We will have a break between those matches and then start after with Kankuro no Sabuka vs Shino Abarame and then Shikamaru Nara vs Dosa Kinyuta, and then the winner of Shikamaru vs Dosa will fight Temari no Sabuku. Is that understood? The Hokage announced, getting nods from all of the genin in front of him as he then finished up with the finals will be in a month's time to allow the nobles to get here in time. Dismissed. Upon being dismissed, Naruto grinned and shunshined out of the forest of death and started to walk about as he was thinking who to ask to be his sensei, as he knew the council would make Kakashi train Sasuke. While walking around he heard a perverted giggling and looked around to see he was at the hot spring and smirked. You're finally here to do your job then, pervert? Naruto asked, and then heard a growl from whoever he called Aro Kyavua. The man jumped down from the top of the hot spring and landed in front of Naruto. Naruto got a good look at his face and knew exactly who it was. Damn it, brat, muttered the man as Naruto grinned more. You're too much like your mom with nicknames, the man muttered as Naruto feigned a hurt look. I'll have you know, Jiraiya, I asked Pa to get you to come back and help me out but you never did, Naruto said before smiling. But I do thank you for all the gifts and will take an apology in the form of being trained by you over the next month, Naruto said with a grin as Jiraiya grumbled before perking up at what Naruto said. Chunin exams already? Jiraiya asked as Naruto nodded. I guess I could train you a thing or two, maybe let you sign a contract, Jiraiya said as Naruto smiled and chuckled. Let's get going then, ya perv, Naruto said as Jiraiya grumbled about disrespectful brats as they walked to an empty training ground. Once reaching it, Jiraiya looked at Naruto and swung the scroll at the bottom of his back to his front before he put it on the ground. This right here, my boy, is the Toad's contract. Only had 3 people sign it to this date and the first one's name was so old that it's worn out, Jiraiya said as he unrolled the scroll in front of Naruto, and Naruto smiled upon seeing the 2 familiar names of Jiraiya and his dad's name before he looked up to Jiraiya. You think I'm ready to sign it? Naruto asked, getting a nod. After the nod, Naruto took a deep breath and bit his thumb before writing his name on the blank space under Minato's name, and then Jiraiya rolled the scroll back up. And now we just need to get the Toads to agree to have you as their summoner, Jiraiya said as Naruto nodded, and Jiraiya continued. Just gotta summon the boss Toad and then survive his test he will give you, Jiraiya said as Naruto nodded again, and Jiraiya ran through the hand signs for summoning jutsu, boar, dog, bird, monkey and finally ram. Just get some blood and smear it on the hand you signed the contract with and run through the hand signs and try to summon Gamabunta, Jiraiya said as Naruto nodded and ran through the hand signs before doing it for real. he bit his thumb and smeared across his right palm and ran through the hand signs. "Kuki Yos no Jutsu," Naruto exclaimed. Nothing seemed to happen until a cloud of smoke appeared under him the size of the Hokage Tower, and then Naruto looked down to see a giant orange toad with a giant Tonto strapped to his back. "Hey, you must be Gamabunta," Naruto said as Gamabunta then used his tongue to hold Naruto in front of him and narrowed his eyes. "Who's asking?" Gamabunta asked as Naruto looked confused before he realized he didn't introduce himself yet. "Oh, right, well, I'm Naruto Uchiha, nice to meet ya," Naruto said before he then thought a little, "I'm surprised the pervert, ma, or pa never told you all about me. I mean, I was the next to be Toad Sage after my father died," Naruto muttered to himself as Gamabunta's eyes widened and realized who it was. "Minato's brat?" Gamabunta asked as Naruto tried to make him quiet as he nodded. "Yeah, my dad's your old summoner," Naruto said before he smiled a little. "Anyways, what's the test?" Naruto asked as Gamabunta smirked and put Naruto on his head. "Hold on until sunset and then I'll consider you my summoner and equal," Gamabunta said as Naruto nodded and used chakra to stick to Gamabunta's head. Sunset. All over the village you could see Gamabunta hopping as if trying to shake something off his back, although if you looked close enough you would see Naruto on Gamabunta's back. This continued for another 5 minutes until Gamabunta stopped and saw Naruto still on his back and looking only a little exhausted. After all, it was his first time summoning, so he accidentally used too much chakra. Naruto looked down at Gamabunta with a grin as he knew he had won. "So nice to officially become your summoner, Chief Toad," Naruto said as Gamabunta grinned and nodded back before disappearing in a pop and returning to the summon realm. Naruto looked down and started to fall, and in his fear of falling put his arms in front of him. What happened next stunned Jiraiya almost enough to make him quit his research. Almost. Naruto's hands as they shot forward must have had chakra, and as the next thing Jiraiya knew, a tree exploded from the ground and caught Naruto by his ankle before slowly lowering him to the floor, making Naruto look around confused. "Mokuton," Jiraiya muttered, and Naruto looked confused. "Brat, you just used Mokuton?" Jiraiya exclaimed as Naruto started to realize what he meant and looked at the tree behind him that slowly lowered into the ground before the ground fixed itself, and Naruto chuckled. "I knew I was awesome," he shouted as he then heard Tsunade's voice from the entrance of the training ground. "Come on, perv. Granny is shouting it's time to dinner," Naruto finished as he started to run off. Not long after they both reached Tsunade, and to her surprise Jiraiya didn't try flirt with her. "Naru-chan, what happened when he was training you?" Tsunade asked, and Naruto replied happily. "I may have accidentally used something that has been lost for generations," Naruto said, and Tsunade nodded whilst thinking what it was before she looked at Naruto and saw the gem from the necklace Hashirama gave her glowing. "Mokuton," Tsunade whispered to herself, making Naruto nod and grin as they entered the Senju compound. "That's what has you gobsmacked?" Tsunade asked Jiraiya, who nodded. "Yeah, 1 minute he was on Bunta and the next falling in the air because Bunta decided to test him a little more. I was about to go help him, but next thing I knew he was being carried by a tree root to the floor and being slowly lowered down," Jiraiya said before he looked to Tsunade and chuckled. "So how does it feel to see it back?" Jiraiya asked as Tsunade chuckled a little. "Infuriating," she replied as Jiraiya asked why. "Because they'll expect him to go into CRA to keep the bloodline alive. But the way he's been recently, I would have thought he has a girlfriend," Tsunade said as Jiraiya giggles a little, and Tsunade decided to hit him over the head. "Perv on my grandson and I will make sure me and Shizun castrate you with a rusty spoon," Tsunade threatened as he nodded, covering his crown jewels. Week 1 of the training month. During the first week, Naruto and Jiraiya focused on Naruto's speed while Naruto had shadow clones working on the high ration. He knew he wouldn't use the high ration too much as he didn't want to follow his dad's footsteps. He also upgraded his gravity and restriction seals to as high as he could without stopping his movement altogether. He also learned a couple Mokuton jutsus from the jutsu safe in the Senju compound. He also made sure to keep trying the jutsu until he had them down to the least amount of hand seals he could get it to, which was currently 2 hand seals until he gets taught senjutsu. Jiraiya said he wouldn't be allowed to learn Mokuton until his body is fully matured, basically when he is 16. Him and Tamari also met up a lot more during the week and went on a date on the Saturday of the week. They both went to a small restaurant where he was allowed to go. After the date they announced they were officially dating. This upset a certain Hyuga, but apart from that a lot of the people who were their friends were happy for them. Week 2. During the second week Naruto and Jiraiya worked on his elemental manipulation and teaching Naruto new jutsus. During the week Jiraiya told Naruto the basic lessons for the Rasengan, which to Jiraiya's surprise Naruto mastered the first stage within a day. To master by Naruto's standards he worked it until he had the balloon popping down to an instant. The second stage, which was the rubber ball popping, took Naruto 3 days, and that was because Naruto trained it less. Naruto also got that stage down to an instant again, and then was the final stage. Naruto combined the first 2 stages of rotation and power, but he had to find a way to keep the balloon to not pop while he was using the first stages. He got down the containment stage down to an instant until Jiraiya said he had it down and to test it properly. Naruto then mastered the Rasengan and started to wonder what it would be like with elemental chakra. Week 3. During the third week Naruto upped his seals again. After that he continued to train his usual way, and on top of that he was teaching himself the last of the Mokuton jutsu. Only problem was that some of them only worked in Sage mode, which Naruto didn't have yet, so he decided to continue to practice the others until he had them down to memorization. After that he was given the key by the Toads and Jiraiya for his seal, which surprised Kurama. Naruto upon getting the key entered the seal and smirked at the stunned Kurama. He activated the key and then opened the seal, and Kurama seemed confused. Naruto knew what he would need to do to get access to Kurama's chakra, and Kurama knew it as well. Once the seal opened completely they fought for dominance. During the fight Naruto met Kushina, his godmother, and also another of the Uzumaki clan, which Naruto found out he was part of as well through Mito. Naruto used his Sharingan to copy the Kongo Fusa when Kushina used them. Naruto practiced them with the guidance of Kurama once they subdued him, as Kurama's other Jinchuriki keys had them as well. Week 4 Final week. During his final week Naruto and Jiraiya had a spar to see how strong Naruto was. The spar ended with Jiraiya winning, but he admitted that was due to experience. Naruto was also taught how to use the Kyuubi cloak, although Kurama told him about a form he would be able to use once he was fully mature. Naruto looked forward to this new cloak and kept training using the cloaks, although he couldn't make it past the 4th tail without almost going insane from the amount of hatred. Naruto also deduced he would need to defeat his inner darkness before he could master Kyuubi cloak, so he stopped training it. Another thing he and his clones trained in was the successful usage of the Hiraishin. Naruto could use it almost as fast as his father, although this was also made easier because of his sensory abilities. In Jiraiya's eyes Naruto was able to take on almost anyone from the village but a handful, those being the Sunin, Hiruzen, Danzo, and Itachi, all of which were S-rank shinobi or higher. Chunin Exam Arena. In the center of the arena was most of the genin in the exams, all of them but Sasuke and Dosu. Naruto was looking at his girlfriend with a soft smile on his face, and she smiled back, although she also had a blush at Naruto's attire. Naruto wore a cloak similar to his father's, but it was black with red flames. On top of that he was wearing a skin-tight shirt and baggy pants. The shirt clung to his body and showed off his built body. On his shirt over vital areas were small armor plates which Naruto made using some of the metals he found in the vault of his house. The metal could take an all-out punch from Tsunade, who had also started to train again to protect Naruto and Konoha after she found out about the invasion. She would protect the home of her family no matter what. Naruto turned to the Hokage box and smirked at Jiraiya, who was whispering in Hiruzen's ear how strong Naruto currently is. Hiruzen nodded slightly and smiled at Naruto, who smirked, and Hiruzen's eyes widened in realization as he started to cry a little, muttering about demmed brat going to give him more paperwork. Naruto then turned to the crowd, feeling a lot of eyes on him. As he turned around, the first pair of eyes he made contact with was the Fire Daimyo, who was looking at him in realization. The next ones he turned to were the Jonin sensei, who were looking at him with a soft chuckle. Naruto finally stopped looking around when he heard the proctor speak up. "Hello. My name is Genma Shiranui, the proctor of the finals," Genma said as he looked at the examines. "Everyone here already knows the rules. Now any questions?" Genma asked as the examines shook their head and Genma nodded. "All right. Would Naruto, Uchiha and Neji Hyuga stay in the arena while the rest of you go to the contestant box?" Genma said as they nodded. Naruto and Neji stayed in the arena as they stared at each other before Neji arrogantly spoke up. "You may as well quit. Fate has already deemed me the winner, while you're nothing more than the failure of the Uchiha clan," Neji said with a smirk, and Naruto sighed before shaking his head. Yeah, let's just start the match," Naruto said as he closed his eyes and opened them, showing his fully mature Sharingan. He glared at Neji as Genma nodded. "And begin," Genma said as he shined out of the arena. Once Naruto sensed him gone, he saw Neji activate his Byakugan and run at him. Neji went to perform a palm strike to Naruto's shoulder. Although Naruto wasn't there, it was a afterimage showing Naruto's speed with his seals on. Naruto looked to Neji as he stood behind Neji and sighs. "You know, Neji, if I remember, caged birds aren't supposed to attack the main branch family," Naruto said, surprising the Hyugas that Naruto knew about the caged bird seal. "And I'm pretty sure I know someone who was trying to figure out a way to get rid of said seal and left their notes to me," Naruto said as he looked to Hayashi, as Hayashi then realized who the child was and his eyes widened. When Naruto stated that he had notes of the seal and how to remove it, Neji almost face faulted and the Hyuga elders were in outrage until the Hokage spoke up. "Naruto, what do you mean?" the Hokage asked as Naruto looked at him and sighed. "My Ryo-san left my Kaa-chan with some sealing notes to pass on to me," Naruto said as Hiruzen's eyes widened and Naruto nodded. "He even left the ones he mastered from other notes and made his signature moves," Naruto said before he then sighed, seeing the confused eyes on him. "And because of us talking about this, I believe it's time. After all, I'm strong enough to take his name if I wished, or my Obachan's name," Naruto said as Hiruzen nodded and sighed. "I believe so too," Hiruzen said as Tsunade, who was sat in the VIP box, looked at Naruto with a smile and nodded. "As you all know, my Kaa-san was Hikari Uchiha, daughter of Madara Uchiha and his unknown wife Hotori Uchiha. But my father was never announced," Naruto said loud enough for the audience to hear him. "My father was the hero of the leaf who, if you didn't know, also sealed away the Kyuubi into me," he said, shocking the audience as they realized who it was. "Yes, my Ryo-san was Minato Namikaze, son of Tsunade Senju and Grey Moth Namikaze," Naruto said as the audience sat there stunned until they saw Naruto pull out a tri-pronged kunai and throw it to the other side of the arena and then teleported to it. "And I know all of his sealing techniques and have all of his and Kushina Uzumaki's sealing knowledge," Naruto stated, shocking the audience more. Neji stood there stunned until he scowled a little. "You mean to tell me that your Ryo-san sealed the Kyuubi into you?" Neji asked, and Naruto chuckled as he nodded. "Yeah, he sealed the fox that attacked on the day I was born. He did his duty of Hokage but also sacrificed his family as well. But also because of the attack, my mother was infected by the Kyuubi's killing intent and died slowly from the corrosive chakra and ki infecting her," Naruto said before he pulled the kunai out of the wall and sealed it away. "And before the council tries, I'm a member of both founding clans of the Leaf. I will take away both clans if they attempt to force me into anything," Naruto said, looking Hiruzen straight in the eyes as Hiruzen sighed and nodded. Naruto smirked before he looked to Neji and shined in front of him, once in front of Neji. Naruto took off the headband and looked at the seal before using his chakra as the ink and unsealed the cage bird seal. He then sighed and quickly flashed through hand signs Bloodline Destroy. Naruto muttered. Once he finished, Neji screamed in pain before passing out, and Naruto turned to Hayashi. Mighty Ou-san's promise has been completed, Hayashi-san, Naruto said, making Hayashi tear up a little and nod. What did the brat do? And what does he mean, Hayashi? Asked Hayashi's father. Hayashi looked to his dad with a smirk and replied, Naruto went and made a seal that the whole clan will wear. It's a seal that will destroy all of our eyes upon death to stop people from stealing them. It's also the promise Minato made me when we first met in the academy, Hayashi said with a smirk before he looked to the Hokage and then chuckled a little. I used to always want to be rid of the demmed seal separating our clan, that I mentioned it to Minato. That's when he took up an interest in Fuinjutsu, and with the help of Kushina they study Fuinjutsu until they made a seal. He was supposed to come and apply it at the end of October, but the Kyuubi attack happened and he died. Hayashi finished, surprising his daughters and infuriating his father. And with the Hokage as my witness, I, Hayashi Hyuga, clan head of the Hyuga clan, hereby destroy the Elder Council to never be reinstated again, Hayashi said, stunning the Hyuga elders.